Welcome back to Fortunate Fishes. Most people who lose $20 million and end up homeless don't come back. Damian Lupo came back to build a $500 million construction company that's rewriting how America builds houses. He grew up in Alaska, washing dishes and dodging polar bears at 80 degrees below zero, got kicked out of college for disrupting the campus bookstore, built 70 companies, and 2008 hit, loses everything, sleeping in his car. What a spectacular interview this is going to be with a guy that has a dozen books out there and has been on 1,200 podcasts. Here you are, it's 2005, you get a letter from grandma and it says, Damian, you should stay single. You're too much of a selfish asshole. You should not be with anybody. Tell me what that felt like.
It's funny. That's actually the first time anybody has ever led or started an interview with that question. And I think it's probably one of the most important things to be able to reflect back on. When that happened, and I hadn't thought about that until you just brought that up for a long time. When I look back and I realize where that came from, pure love and honesty, like her reflection of what she was seeing. It was me focusing on what I wrote about in Reinvented Life. There was this external drive to get more stuff and figure out what was in it for Damian. And she's like, you're not ready for a relationship. You're too fixated on you and what it's all about you. And that's partly why I've been single for a majority of my life, because there was that focus. And so it was probably a gift to my ex-girlfriend that she sent me that note, because we ended up breaking up. And if I married her, it would have been one of the divorces probably that I would have had. So it was really just being more of a hedonistic type of grinding entrepreneur, looking to make money, figuring out how much I could get for me. And it wasn't really about serving. I was in my late 20s, 27, 28 okay. was about when that happened. Yeah. Grinding away as a 20-something mercenary. I probably would have been a good Navy SEAL, just been a mercenary, but that I'm glad that there was a shift. I'm glad that I not only did I lose everything, I lost more than everything in 2008 and went negative $5 million. And that was a gift. It was like grandma was a warning, and then I wasn't paying attention. So the universe said, all right, we're just going to knock you down and drive over you a few times.
You lose 20 million in about 20 minutes. So walk me through those 20 minutes. Like what happened?
It's really interesting. They say, bulls go up the stairs and the bears go out the window, that whole saying. And so there was this buildup over almost a decade of doing some real estate, starting some businesses, getting thrown out of college. And then in 2006 and 2007, I had sold a bunch of houses, like 150 houses, had some money, said, I'm going to build up a bunch of other stuff. And because I'm so smart and I know I'm a genius, I should go do something really big. So I didn't do something big. I did a whole bunch of big things, all simultaneous, all over the country, developing, building complexes. And I had this expectation that there was going to be at least $1 million of profit for me on each one of those. When the markets change, what I learned there was part of getting older with wisdom. Everything can get wiped out at the same time. And the market can be irrational or crazy longer than I could be liquid. So all of the projects simultaneously, I didn't make $1 million on each. I lost more than $1 million on each. And it happened really quick. And I remember thinking, I couldn't be wrong on everything. And I was more wrong than I thought it could be on everything. So it was a hugely humbling experience. And I learned about position sizing and things like concentration risk, like all the things we should be knowing before we do stuff. I learned after I got my butt kicked.
I was just thinking, you're a member of R360. We have 3 R360 members that lost everything and that were living in a car. We have 17 members that didn't go to college, 12 that didn't graduate from high school. Of the 12, half are billionaires. Where did this resilience for you come from?
I think it started off early being told no all the time. And it's the opposite of what I see with most people with their kids. They want to say yes and help them avoid pain at any cost. And my entire childhood was about, no, you can't do this. And it just pissed me off. And so in a way, it was really helpful. It was a safe environment. I wasn't homeless when I was 10, but I was told we didn't have enough money to pay for food. And so I'm getting these messages and I'm thinking, well, that sucks and I'm going to go fix it. So I think it started that way and then it just the message stayed the same. You can't do that. You can't get a car because it's expensive. And I said, I'll go get a full-time job as a 14-year-old, which I did. And so there was this hunger, and it was mostly just being irritated by being told no. I don't think we love being told no.
Did you have siblings?
I had, yeah, I've got a couple of younger sisters, and then I have a half brother that's about 11 years older, and they're absolutely nothing like me. It's very strange. I'm pretty sure I'm the mailman's baby.
When you talk about one of your books that you're 11 years old and you basically started a Nintendo hustle to basically buy your own food and stuff. Tell us about that.
One of the things that as an 11-year-old you think about is video games. At least I did back then. I think that's probably a even bigger thing now with video games. But I was told we don't have money for video games, and I wanted to play. And so there's a part of our brain, there's probably a chromosome that is it's a solver part of your DNA. And I said, okay, well, how do I solve this? And then it dawned on me that if I could buy games and then sell them for more than I bought them for, there's a business there. And so I just started doing that, where I was buying chunks of them. Somebody was selling them in the newspaper, that piece of paper that we used to get delivered to our doorstep. They would sell games, and I would go, and I hired my parents to go drive out and buy all the games at a discount. And then I'd have games to play, and then I'd sell them off one at a time. And it created this really weird business where I got to play in my business. And so it solved all these problems. And I ended up making money, and very strangely ended up hiring my parents, mostly by paying them with pizza. Like
And
that
what,
was,
and what did they like? How did they introduce you? Like, what did your parents think of this 11-year-old kid, 12-year-old doing this stuff?
I my dad that was kind of his background in doing wheeling and dealing, buying things, and it was always part of him making an extra buck here and there. And so I think I probably saw some of that, and that part rubbed off on me. It was interesting because there was a combination of buying something and then selling it for a margin there, but there was also this teaching around scarcity, and so I'm getting these mixed messages that we don't have enough money. I'm being told you should go find expired meat at the grocery store, and it's better to buy one that has $1 off for a $3 thing versus a $2 off for $20 on a package. And he's teaching me how to live within a confined box. And here's how you go make a few extra bucks. So I had to figure out which one I was going to really focus on.
I hated being told no also. I remember I wanted a little, those little Honda 50 motorcycles, my dad, my mother, no, 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 no. There was a Catholic church about a block away from the house. So I became an altar boy, and I would go to church to make money. And then on Saturday, the nuns would come in and they would make the host. And it was like a pancake thing. I would pour the mix, and then I would take the scraps and I'd put them in a plastic bag, throw the plastic bag away in a big dumpster, came at night, grabbed it, made these little baggies, took them to the Catholic school, sold them for a nickel. Great little business until I got caught. And then I got kicked out of school. And my father was the whip, my mother the brush. So the other thing is I learned not to get caught, but damn it, I did finally buy that little motorcycle. So,
There were plenty of the I'm going to go try this thing, and I remember I cornered the market on candy bars at our local grocery store. I went down there, and I mean, I bought every candy bar because they had some sale. It was like 19 cents for a candy bar, and at the school they were selling for 75 cents. And so I said, well, if I can buy them for 19, I can sell them for 50. And I ended up eating more than my profits, and I was getting super fat by doing this business. And then I got busted. It was like I was walking around with a trench coat with a bunch of candy bars inside. You say, hey, buddy, you want a candy bar? And it seemed like a good idea because I saw margin, but the logistics and the legalities of that didn't really work well.
you've written a dozen books. Like, where did that come from? Was it something early on you enjoyed writing, or something that you did later on in life?
When I look back, the first book I wrote was my real estate book. It was The Maverick Mistakes in Real Estate Investing. And it was funny because I think my first review was from my mom. And actually, I had a book signing in Alaska, and she was the only one that showed up, which is really kind of funny. I had this huge display, and there's all these books, and they said, how many do you think you'll sell? And I was like, oh, like 50 or 100. So I had this huge thing. I ended up shipping all of them except for one back because my mom bought one. And when I wrote it, it was really two things. It was one, to share all the experiences of doing dumb things and helping people avoid those dumb things, and also for me to get these ideas and clarifying my thinking on paper. Because if you put something on paper and it actually makes sense to somebody else, including you reading it, you probably have a pretty good sense of what it is. And if it's in your head, I realized I'm probably not that clear if it's just in my head. So a lot of these books were a clarification of thinking and then putting rules in front of myself to not make the same mistakes and to have guidelines like Unicornomics was this playbook for how you create $1 billion company. And I just got told a couple days ago by a friend that read it. He said, "Are you doing all that stuff?" And I was like, "No, I'm not following my own advice. I need to reread my own book."
That is funny. So if somebody wanted to start with your books, which would you recommend? Would it be Reinvented Life, Unicornomics? Where would they start?
It's one of those two, and really, when people say which book that they often ask, and I go, it depends on you as because what matters to you. If you want to understand, Reinvented Life was really a shifting from external focus to internal happiness, and so a lot of people haven't gone through that process yet, and to be able to read a story and go, wow, I resonate with some of that stuff, could give somebody a 10-year hack on their life. On the other hand, maybe you're in a good place in terms of personal development and you're thinking, I want to scale up, or I want to build another business. There are rules around getting this foundational piece right. And Unicornomics was probably 50, 60 businesses in, and it was everything that I'd learned. And that's another hack. It's taking 20 years of somebody's experience and boiling it down into a book that takes you an hour to read. That's a really good value proposition.
Huge. What are the most important things you've learned about entrepreneurship? Or if you had to go back and talk to your younger self, what would be 3 or 4 things that you would tell your younger self to make your life easier?
You're going to be wrong more than you're going to be right. And when you're wrong, you don't take it personally. I think there has to be a shift towards removing the concern around the judgment. And that's what holds a lot of people back. They go, if I make a mistake, like if you get 50% right on a test in school, you're a failure and you get ostracized, you get thrown out. Well, in the real world, if you get 50% right, you're in the Hall of Fame, you're a billionaire. Like that's reality. And so understanding that early and really embracing it and then failing faster is such a powerful concept. But people get emotional about looking bad and being able to share. Like one of the mistakes I made, I had a fund years ago, and we hadn't gone profitable, but people were hoping that they would get a distribution. And so my partner and I at the time borrowed some money against the assets in the fund and said, we're going to use this as a distribution. Well, then those assets collapsed and we got a capital call. And so we had to sell the assets at a loss. And we did this because we didn't want to have somebody say, we thought we were going to get distributions. And that was a judgment thing. Instead of us owning the principles that you don't distribute money when you don't have any money, like you don't go borrow and leverage to do it. And that goes back to that fundamental idea that you need to be confident in yourself, understand you're going to make a ton of mistakes and do it as fast as possible, learn from them. Try not, like I skydived 4 times and every time was an increasing problem. Like the 3rd time my chute failed and the 4th time that the space shuttle exploded over me. So I don't skydive anymore. That was the universe saying, you're a dumbass. Stop jumping out of
Right.
planes.
I've done 21 jumps, but I've had all these dreams of dying, not skydiving, but in one of those. I'd say, okay, I'm not doing that. The universe has kind of warned me, but I'm a big believer, Bitcoin. I own silver, gold, hard assets. You wrote a book about silver and gold. How did that come about?
The other part of writing, it's learning, and it's also saying, okay, if I'm going to be in a business, I want to get really clear on what it is this business is all about, be able to communicate that to people, and then they can understand. It's a great leverage point to be. So I wrote that book to be able to say, here's the 21 things that you need to know, the 21 lessons with gold and silver, and everything there is still relevant. Like many books, it was a marketing piece. It was just like Rich Dad Poor Dad was a marketing piece for Robert Kiyosaki's game Cash Flow. That's why he wrote the book. It wasn't to sell 50 million, which he did. It was to sell the board game, which is hilarious. And I wrote that because I had a precious metals company, still do. And I wanted to be able to help people understand why they should do what you do, what I do, which is have real money in silver and gold. And then avoid the dumb things like collectible coins that are a story that you shouldn't buy. And if you don't hold it, you don't own it. Same thing with Bitcoin, with cold wallets. And like, there are these rules. And it was really to clarify, this is how I think about things. And if you want to understand me, this is what instead of having the same conversation over and over. And then every once in a while, I need to read my own book and go, oh yeah, I forgot about that when I'm doing the opposite. So it kind of is a good humbling kick in the face.
Yeah, I tell you, my wife and my kids have made so much fun of me with the frickin' big silver bars. And like, Yeah, it's like this shit. It's heavy. Like all of a sudden you
Mhm.
got like 800 pounds of stuff. But now that, silver like crossed $80, they're like, oh, okay.
There was I recently had some movement. Like typically we'll ship UPS or FedEx, and if you
Yeah.
get enough, you end up getting a semi truck. And so I shipped a metric ton of silver for my own self across the country, and I was laughing because I did the math, and it was literally a metric ton. And then there was reports right before Venezuela fell recently, or at least Maduro was captured, that there was 847 million ounces that was flown out of Venezuela to, we don't know, Miami, Russia, China. And so there's all this stuff going. And I was like, man, 847 million ounces. And I'm doing mine. I'm like, yeah, I had like 20,000 or 25,000 ounces or whatever it was. 847 million. It's just this monumental amount. But you also, like, people should be paying attention to this space because things are changing, and most people are not going to realize it's happening until it's over, and it's happening right now.
So what is that message? Like young people or anybody watching, like why should they own hard assets like precious metals that so many people make fun of?
Yeah, well, they make fun of us until they go, wait, what's happening is most people are bitching about how things are expensive, and it's not that they're more expensive. It's just that the dollar is being killed because it's manipulated. And hard assets, the probably one of the most powerful things about silver and gold is there's no counterparty risk. There's JP Morgan cannot screw with the value of the silver you hold. They have and got fined $1 billion in 2020 by manipulating the paper market. And so having real hard assets, whether it's Bitcoin or physical gold and silver, dirt, things like that, we've been disconnected and trained to be disconnected from that by people that are profiting and harvesting us. And so when you fundamentally understand that gold and silver is real money, and like in silver's case, it's the most electrically conductive metal that exists. So it's required in all the AI and the EVs and the solar. There's a reason it's exploding. And Bank of America just had a call for like $309 an ounce in the near term. That's because there's a massive shortage, like 2 to 300 billion ounces a year that aren't being produced. And so people go, oh, I'm just going to get some ETFs. And I go, those are manipulated. There's like 50 to 1 contracts for every ounce that might be in there. And you will probably get squeezed or hammered, and they'll manipulate the paper price. But physically, it's a different world. It's real. It's honest. That's what I love about it.
And China does most of the the processing of it. So it creates all kinds of issues when now it goes into all kinds of munitions, cars. But I think what people don't realize is that if you look at the money supply, 8% a year you're losing in purchasing power. So in the rule of 72, every 9 years, you're losing half of your purchasing power. So people just don't really understand that over the last 40 years, it used to be a Motel 8, you know, $8 for a night. Well, now it's not $8, it's like 100. And people just don't understand that concept. My mom passed recently in July, and all the coins used to be silver until like 1965. And my grandmother collected all these coins, passed them to my mom, then passed them to us. My brothers and sister are like, what the hell are we going to do with these coins? And my sister had gone to the shop, said, this roll of quarters, like it's like worth $250, not this little roll of quarters, because it's silver. So silver has kept and appreciated. It's just people don't think that way. And it really screws the folks that don't have capital worse.
And that's really the thing that's most frustrating, that people think that they're doing the right thing. They're playing by the rules, and there's this system. And I think that there's a lot of pushback against the Federal Reserve and against these things based on the current administration and an awareness that we're being screwed with, or we're being lied to, or we're being stolen from. You used to be a crazy person if you started talking about that. Or, I mean, there were moments where I thought, if I say this, like, I've beat up on Jamie Dimon and Chase because they're cheaters. They literally, and I have accounts there, but they cheat. And I used to say that, and I'm like, I'm going to get debanked. Well, I did get debanked. There's consequences to pushing back on these systems. But the reality is you can do a lot of things to safeguard yourself, but you have to understand why. And to your point about our money, and Motel 8, went from, or Super 8 went from $8 to $100. You shouldn't be mad about that. You should ask, what can I do about it? Because there's like silver was up, if you will, 150% in 2025, and I expect it to do a similar or more this year. What does that mean? It just means that your dollars are not safe sitting there unless you like a guarantee 8% loss or 12 or 15% loss of purchasing power every year. Then you can have a guarantee. That is about the only guarantee you can possibly have with dollars.
So I want to switch topics. Martial arts has been an important part of my life. Judo, then I was a boxer, then kung fu, and you are deep into martial arts, started your own form. Tell us about your journey in martial arts and how's it affected your success.
So it's really funny. As a kid, I thought martial arts would be great. Like I want to go be a badass. I see all these movies with Steven Seagal and Chuck Norris and things. And so I did some things, tried some things, it didn't stick. And then in 2000, I walked into a dojo, an Aikido dojo, because I think I'd seen Steven Seagal. And I walked up to the instructor, and just something about it felt like I was home. And I went up to him and I said, "Do you do private lessons?" And he said, "Why don't you see if you last a month?" And I was like, "Month?" So I was going to every class possible.
And where was this? Where were you living at the time?
This was in Phoenix. So I started real estate investing and I started martial arts the same year. And so I'm learning all these new things and I'm being stretched, and, it's like massive neuroplasticity. My brain is going crazy. And I ended up being his first black belt. And we trained all the time. And what happened during that, my Aikido, which is the classic form that all my black belts are based on, and the form that I developed with Yokido, which is a blend of Aikido, yoga, and Reiki. It was all about using the understanding of Aikido and the art of peace and the blending both in the dojo and in the real world, and they became inter they both, like, one would show up in the other. And so the way I moved in Aikido was the way that I moved in business dealings. And what I found is that it was the exact same thing. And over 20 years, I just kept going deeper and deeper until one day I went, I've got something that's different. And then I called it Yokido. And it was because if you do something long enough, it bakes itself into you and something else is birthed. It's not the thing you started with. So now it's everything that I do. It is Yokido. It comes out. People don't realize that's what's happening, but there's philosophy in how I do life that's really based on all that training.
And what is that?
It's the idea that when you think about life, there's conflict, whether you're dodging vehicles or whether somebody's coming at you in an argument or a business deal. There's different ways you can fight it. You can go straight into it. That's classic boxing, or there's different martial arts. There's classic Aikido where you blend around it. And so there's different approaches to these different situations, moments of conflict. What evolved for me was this idea that I'm not here just for me. If I was here just for me, so one, you start off with an ego, which is like the lowest energy, where you punch somebody in the face and you're like, yeah, I got him. The next one is it's about me and it's about primal survival. So I'm just going to avoid them. And you can get really good at that. You can go hide, you can move around people gracefully. The next level, which I think is more of the enlightenment, if you have studied power versus force, you move up in these energy levels towards love and connection and that space. The next level is where you not only blend around, but in the process of blending, you heal the conflict, you heal the tension, you let go of the tension. In a practical sense, that means if somebody's attacking you, you not only are avoiding them with their fist, but you're actually working to heal them. And that was where the Reiki came in, and looking at conflicts. And really, when somebody attacks me, I ask a question. I'm like, well, hey, what's really going on? And it's to help heal that thing. And that's more of an act of love, as opposed to I'm just going to ignore the thing and go on my merry way. I'm actually going to try to make the world better in each moment of conflict as I'm moving through it.
And asking questions takes you to your frontal lobe and hopefully out of a kind of angry child. But I was a boxer in college, not because I wanted to, just somebody said, you're going to be a boxer. And that's what happened. And I was good at it. But when I started back into Kung Fu, it's like, as a boxer, you lock your elbow and then you find out, well, 13 pounds of pressure, boom, you can break an arm just like that. So then you learn to hook your thing and use their energy against them. But I had this sensei from a grandmaster. It was in Denver when I was learning this. And I remember like he had a plexiglass and a candle on the other side, and he'd go, stop. The thing would like everybody else would try it. And it's like, okay, something is like going on here. We had to learn. And after like 6 months, you had to walk into a biker bar by yourself and come out without getting into a fight. And I remember like walking in there, and maybe when I first started, you'd look down, but after like a year of really 4 or 5 days of martial arts training, you walk in, you look around, you go order a beer. And I think the look that you get is like, this guy's either a total freaking idiot or he's dangerous. We're going to leave him alone. I don't know which, but to me, it gave me a lot of peace of mind. And also like, shit, I'm a trained weapon. Last thing I'm going to do is get into any fight with anybody because I'm afraid of what I might do. And if I was challenged, I was always asking questions, trying to like not have to get into a fight. And I pretty much never did, but having that kind of, I don't know how it is with you, just that peace of mind that you can handle yourself in a bad situation.
It's the same. And what I loved about that training, I started traveling the world, and it was a different experience going out because there was a there's a subconscious, unconscious knowing around how you can function with other people, potential threats, and it allows you to move around differently to where you're not afraid. I don't go and think, okay, what am I going to do? Unconsciously, when I'm sitting in a restaurant, when I'm walking in a foreign city, I'm naturally doing things. I'm not walking towards a dark alley. I'm naturally staying away from conflict, and I'm also trusting the training. And there's a piece around that, and it's a beautiful gift for parents that have their kids doing martial arts, because they go off into the world having a sense of just a trust that they can get through it without being afraid. And I used to laugh at my dad because I'd go somewhere, go to Nicaragua, and he'd say, the Sandinistas are going to come after you. And I was like, Dad, that was 1980, whatever. And and I also kind of laughed, and I thought, I think I'm okay. Like I'm aware enough, like to all the training, when I go around, I can sense if somebody's approaching me and is going to try to pickpocket me or is going to do
Right.
something. I wasn't worried about it. And I think people also pick up on it when you have this sense of certainty, when you have an aura, if you will, of I am, I'm not somebody you want to mess with. You're not a victim or prey to a predator. Predators look for weak people that are naive and they're not paying attention. When you have the training, you're naturally picking up on things. And I mean, I was training with my eyes closed, where people, I would slow motion have them punch, and then you learn how to feel this stuff. And as you do that more and more, it's really wild because you move around. You basically can move with your eyes closed, but you feel things behind you and to the side. And it gives you an empowering feeling of, I can move through life without being afraid. And then you don't have to focus on, oh my gosh, Chicken Little, the world's going to come and get me all the time. You can move and build things and live.
Yeah, I remember the training, blocks, blindfolded, moving from one to the other. And I was, you mentioned the Sandinistas, 84, 85. I spent 6 months doing stuff I can't talk about in Nicaragua. But because I was going there, they taught me things, knife fighting and other things that normally I didn't. I wasn't a black belt, so you had to earn all of the training. But uh, my son, he speaks Japanese. He was in Japan for 6 months, learned the most Japanese because he joined an Aikido club. And because he started at the bottom, but he got invited to people's homes. And he said if it weren't for joining the Aikido club, he just would not have learned as much Japanese or about the culture.
That was actually one of my favorite experiences in my life, was going to the Hambo Dojo in Tokyo, the home of Aikido. And it was either the grandson or the great grandson of O Sensei, Morihei Shiba, who taught the class. And I was there. And at the time, I think I was a third degree black belt. And so they took the senior student, which was this tiny woman, like just, you look at her, you're like, she could blow away in the wind. And she wiped my ass all over the mat. I was bleeding everywhere. I spent the next 8 days in the onsens, the hot springs all over Japan, healing from this 1 hour class. And it was this incredible thing. This is where Steven Seagal trained at that dojo. And the people there was such a bond and so much love to train together, and so much respect, all in Japanese. And the little Japanese that I knew from my years of training was not enough, because I was trying, my brain was trying to process the Japanese, and they were moving faster than I was processing. So I ended up just getting the hell beat out of me. And it was one of the best days of my life.
I have a similar experience with a woman who was a black belt, eagle formed, and I got in her way a little bit, and I think I jumped. She hit me, and I probably went 6 feet. I'm just wondering, how does somebody this small have so much energy and power? But I want to switch to your entrepreneurial career and what you're doing now with FrameTech, conscious capitalism. You're recognized by Governor Hobbs. Tell us about that venture, how you got into it, what's exciting, and what are you doing?
So FrameTech is an interesting, funny origin story where it showed up. A friend of mine of many years reached out to me and he said, "I got something I want you to see." And I said, "Great, email it to me." And he said, "No, I need to hand it to you." And this is like, an OG. He goes, "No, I gotta fly to Dallas and hand you this pile of papers." And I laughed. And I said, "Okay." So he flies out, he hands it to me, and I said, "Great." And then I ignored it for like 6 months. And then in the spring of 22, I took a look at it and I thought, something is here. This is a solution to the housing crisis. People complain that housing is too expensive. We don't have enough. Well, yeah, we're not producing enough. It's supply and demand. And quite frankly, most of the housing that's built is trash. It's getting worse and worse. And this seemed to be a solution. It was about framing. It was how to frame faster, less expensive, better quality. And I was like, okay, that's the trifecta. If you can do it faster, better quality, and cheaper, you normally get like two, maybe, if you are doing anything. And so I said, all right, I'm interested in meeting this team. And so the guys here in Arizona came out. I flew out to Arizona and met with them, and I liked them. And it was one of those things where I knew that it's really all about the teams. An idea can be great, but if you don't have a world-class team, you're likely it's going to die. And so I said, I really like this idea, but I freaking love you guys. And so I'm in. And so I committed $40 million to this idea. They said it'll take 32. Ultimately, it's taking about 65, which is what everything, it takes longer, it costs more
Yeah.
to build it. And so they said, great. And they walked away. And I think they all thought, this guy's full of crap. I didn't have $40 million. I literally had a community, and I knew that this community was hungry, that I'd nurtured. I'd built relationships with a couple thousand people that were looking for really cool things that weren't just about putting money into something that was making money, but it was creating value. It was doing something good, and like everybody winning. And so I reached out to people, and we started spending money a couple weeks later, and it turned into a manufacturing plant that's building all the framing, all the wood framing for houses and hotels and apartments. And it was a process of bringing several hundred people together, and then saying, we're going to go build something that's never been built before to solve one of the biggest crises that we have to solve. And when we solve this together, one thing people don't realize is wood is being grown too fast. And so it's becoming spongy, which means it doesn't have the structural integrity. And we've solved that problem. And so it's a really cool thing to be a part of something. And it's also really humbling when it doesn't work the way it's supposed to, and then you have to pivot. And that's where I said earlier, it's really about failing faster and then having the right people around you to solve the problems that you end up running into. And so now we're like, the governor and people are paying attention. Berkshire has been looking at it. A lot of large international companies are showing up and saying, we want to see what you're doing. We want to be a part of this. And it's because we're solving a huge problem, and there's no innovation. Construction hasn't had innovation since 54 with the nail gun. So we are at the edge. We have a FrameTech formula. That is our secret sauce. It's what we do, and people are starting to copy it and innovate, which is cool because it helps to solve the problem the more people shift their thinking. And that's what FrameTech is all about.
Well, your CEO, Kyle Brock, said that you're the best VC partner he's ever worked with because you actually understand operations, and most VCs don't. Why is that?
I think most VCs look at investment through a spreadsheet, and I look at it through the having been an operator in many different things, and then really deeply trusting the operators and not inflicting my will because I want to see a certain thing happen faster. One of the reasons that we have that relationship, and they'll say you're the best VC partner, when they say, hey, we need $2 million extra that wasn't part of the budget for these robots, I go, great. And like 15 minutes later, they've got a wire. I don't slow them down. And the reason that I don't do it and the reason I don't have to is because there's so much trust. They trust me, I trust them. And when you have trust, this is Stephen Covey's book, The Speed of Trust. It's a game changer. Most VCs don't have the level of trust that I do. They scrutinize and they make it painful for problems, and they basically just crush people in the operation space. I think that that's the opposite, because I'm not going to get what I want or what the investors want. We're not going to solve the mission if I'm putting a thumb on their neck.
And did that come from, I built companies, had VCs, never had a good relationship. There's an R360 member, young guys, had 3 VCs in his company. And I said, you should write a book about that because I was not as lucky as you. But is your attitude because you've had VCs in your own companies and you've learned not to be like them?
I just asked the question. This comes back to martial arts. It's about what the relationship is going to be. And I've had all these different relationships with primarily human beings. And I
Right.
say that kind of tongue in cheek. Like VCs aren't really humans. They're sort of like robots with checkbooks. Maybe they have a harder soul sometimes. But it was understanding that if I'm going to do anything, and this wasn't how it was in the beginning, 25, 30 years ago, but it's really about relationship. How do I want to be treated? How do they want to be treated? And then asking, can we do that together? And not saying I'm just going to inflict my will because I'm in a stronger position of authority or something, because either we're on the same team or we're going to be adversarial. And I think a lot of times VCs end up becoming adversarial with
Right.
operators. These are my best friends. Like it's really cool. I get to go and hang out and we spend more time laughing. And I'm thinking, why would anybody want to do anything other than this? And it's because they're obsessed about the money as opposed to letting that be the side effect of the thing that they're building and creating and birthing together, and trusting that they can work through that and gestate something magical. I think people get too obsessed with the side effect and the product being the money instead of allowing it to be a natural thing that occurs because you've got the right people with the right mission at the right time.
I read something that like you put childcare and wellness centers in manufacturing plants and your competitors have to think you're absolutely crazy. But what do the retention numbers say and employee engagement?
So yeah, one of the things that you watch and you see the Google campus, and the Google campus, it's sort of a trick. They have all these things that
Right.
probably, the childcare and the wellness facility, and you can get anything and everything. And it's like, wow, all these benefits. No, they actually just want you to stay there and never leave. Like they'll give you a sleep pod so you can take a nap and then keep working, do your 18 hours. But that's really where this stuff exists, maybe in high finance with the Goldmans or whatever. But most places, especially manufacturing, would never consider doing this kind of stuff. That most of the mentality of operators in manufacturing or blue collar stuff is get people in, get them out, have them do the thing. They're a cog, they're disposable. And from our perspective, and this is smart business, we looked at them and said, all right, how do we help keep them healthy and not only physically, but how do we keep them mentally and spiritually strong, which is their family, that unit. And so holistically, we looked at this as if we treat them well, one, they're going to be healthier, they're going to be sick less. And if we're making it easier for them to deal with kids, talking about childcare, which is brutally expensive. So we said, well, how do we solve all these things? Well, let's have a place where they can get really good food. So that's part of the formula, that we have conscious food, not like Fritos and crap like that, but bringing in healthy whole foods like our new food pyramid that Kennedy just put out there. And then building a childcare facility so that people can come in, they can have their kids there. It's not going to drain one entire spouse's income. It's going to be part of the benefits. They can go see their kids at lunch. There's no stress. If they're 4 minutes late, that's $40. We took that out of the equation. And then we put a wellness facility through a naturopathic doctor, one of the best in the country. He's operating out of our facility. So he's there and people can come in and do all the preventative, whether it's acupuncture or IVs, all that stuff that keeps people healthier. And it's their families too. We're doing this stuff, and guess what? People aren't leaving. And so you go, well, that sounds like it's really expensive. No, what's expensive is turnover, retraining people.
Yep.
And when you have great people and you're taking care of them, and it's not just platitudes, it's really, they can feel it. Like they're not going to go anywhere else. And maybe other companies say, well, we should do that too, which they should. And so it's a cool thing to be able to say, hey, it's not just a manufacturing company, it's not just high tech, but it's about building a community and serving the community. And you're going to love being a part of this.
Wow. Now you're 47, right?
I turned 48 in
48.
25.
So no
Yep.
family yet, and you've acknowledged that you've prioritized business over kind of personal balance. But what are you thinking about now or long term, or where's your head around that?
I had a thought, was driving, and I had this thought. It was like the midway thought. I was like, okay, so I'm like halfway to Charlie Munger or something, because at 48, there's this
Right, right.
96 or Buffett. And I thought, okay, what do I look back on and say, man, should I have done something? I don't do much shoulding. I don't think you can do it. I mean, you should all over yourself. It does. Nobody's happy about that. So I don't really. It's not a regret thing, or an allowance for that. But I do. I look at my life now and I say, okay, let's say I'm at the halfway point. What really matters to me? And what matters is the connections. And in large part why I joined R360 was to be a part of a community of people where we're having real conversations, real experiences, connecting at a deep level,
Right.
and opening the space for me to build a family, because I'm probably going to make people sad or like cringe. But the amount of Christmases and Thanksgivings I've literally sat at a Starbucks by myself is more than I've spent with other people. And I always say that it's one of the happiest places, more than Disneyland, because everybody's like, yay, I'm getting coffee, and I get a break from my crazy family, and the baristas are making like thousands of dollars in tips. So there's a lot of happy energy, and I would work on goals. But it's also, I look back this year and spent most of the holiday season by myself, and I think, is that really what I want the rest of my life? No, I want more of the messy. I want more of the laughter. I want the noise. I want the connection. And that's become really, really important. So it's not that there's a shift. It's focusing on the mission, building things is part of it, but that's not the only thing. And that was really pretty much the only thing. And the relationships just got beat to like hammered dog shit over the years. And it was really unfortunate, especially for the women that I was involved with. They didn't get the best of me. They got the aftermath. And that's not how I'm wired anymore, because there's been an awareness that life is better with other people.
You hired a Italian truffle hunting dog called Dante. What was that about, and what did you learn from that?
So I had this idea. Some friends of mine had got an Italian truffle hunting dog. Um, Legati is the breed of
Right.
dog. And I got really excited about this idea because I was hanging out in Italy with them with this dog in Florida. They'd visit me in Sedona, and I got obsessed about this. And then I started having this whole vision of going and truffle hunting. Like you go into the woods and find a truffle, or the dog finds a truffle. And I thought, man, this is going to be super fun. And it was interesting because my original thinking there was, I want companionship and I want a dog. And so I spent a year with this dog in training, and then the dog showed up in Arizona, and we had an absolute disastrous night. And I went, wait a second, I like the dog lost it, and it was like it was an explosive situation, if you know what I mean. And I went, what am I doing? I said, this is not the right time. And so out of respect for this beautiful creature and my own life, I thought, all right, I need to be conscious and not force the issue. So I actually said, to the trainer, I said, can you keep Dante for, for a while, and let me see if I can get to a place where this makes sense. And she was very graceful about it. So it, like, I was very excited. I spent a year waiting for this
Wow.
experience. And then I was also like being rational and acknowledging what is. After the meltdown in 2010, 11, 12, I spent a couple years with a guy named Frank doing therapy. He also ended up being my sensei, and we went to Tibet together, and we spent almost 2 years. This is right before I wrote Reinvented Life, with one question. And the question is, what is true? And you can go down and peel back layers and go deeper and deeper into that question.
I've gone down that rabbit hole.
It's a great rabbit hole,
Yep.
but it also never ends. Like you can just keep going deeper and deeper to this core, and then you end up in like quarks and nanoparticles and things. But acknowledging what is true, and not trying to convince yourself of something, letting your ego go or somebody else's judgment, forcing the issue. And it was one of those moments where I was really glad. And that's happened in relationships in the last year or two, where I was acknowledging, yeah, this is a nice person, and companionship is nice, but this person's also destroying my soul, or there's something off. And being okay with that, and not worrying about making everybody happy, handing this dog back, even though it was a cool dog. I think that that's one of the most empowering things, getting to a place where you can own whatever is and not what you want it to be.
Yeah, with the help of psychedelics, I've gone down that journey. And my conclusion is the only truth is the stories we tell each other. And so now I examine, well, what are the stories? I think in hypothesis. My hypothesis is X based on this story and these assumptions. And if the assumptions or something changes, I'm willing to change my story, my truth. And I'm humble enough to seeing all the things that I used to believe that I don't believe anymore because of the stories I was basically telling myself. And one of the reasons I'm writing this novel is there's 4 billion people on the planet that come from the same forefather, Abraham. And when Abraham lived, there was no Torah, there was no Quran, there was no Bible. And now there's all these stories that people are killing themselves over a 2,000-year-old story that, like, dude, you're in 2026, you know? And then the other thing is never being a victim. And like, I'm a very powerful human. So if this crisis, catastrophe, or bad thing happened in my life, what is it about the way that I'm showing up that causes, and not looking at anywhere else but myself, you know?
I think that's incredibly empowering, and it's also incredibly responsible. And when you ask, why did I do this? Why is this happening for me versus to me? Or that there's very different ways of approaching the exact same moment in time.
Said earlier, like, what is the universe trying to teach me? Like, what do I need to learn, right? Your grandmother sent you that thing. Well, shit.
I was pissed at the time. Like that, that moment I was like, she doesn't know what she's talking about. She knew exactly what she was talking about. And when I stepped back and had a time to think about it, it all those things that you're talking about, it's so incredibly important to be able to ask the right question, because you're screwed if you start with the wrong question. You're literally either becoming a victim or you're focusing on the thing that it may teach you something. But if you really say, okay, let's start the framework, let's ask the right question to start with, then you can go deeper. I think most people it's like the why before the how. People go, okay, how do we do this? It's like, I used to ask that question after I was with Robert Kiyosaki 25 years ago. He said, stop saying you can't afford things. Say, how can I afford this? And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. So of course I started saying that. And then I started buying Ferraris and doing all these other things. Oh, I could do this by beating up the bank and forcing the issue. The thing I missed though was asking the question, should I do this? I missed
Right.
that one for a long time. So I was very creative. I could force the issue, and I was asking half of the right question, but I missed the other half, at least in that space. And that was really helpful, because what it allowed me to do was ask, how could I, but should I? And so it really set me up to say no for a lot more, as opposed to yes to everything, which creates a lot of chaos.
You know, for the young people watching this, I mean, you grew up in a very humble environment, poor. You've created a lot of wealth. You've also written books about it. And you've said that, one of your life purposes is to free 1 million people from financial bondage. And that's not help people invest better. It's liberation language. So what does financial bondage look like in 2026? What are people not getting? And what can people do to reframe themselves to create at least financial freedom?
My thinking is that most people have shackles on, they have financial shackles on. And for the most part, they're self imposed because they're making a decision. Like, I don't buy into somebody saying, well, I'm from here, or this was my neighborhood, or the people around me. I think that's very debilitating. And it allows you to have a story and an excuse. So financial freedom is not about a pile of money. It's not about cash flow. It's literally about a confidence. So there's cash flow, there's cash, and then there's confidence. There's the 3 C's. And most people are focusing either on, I need 2 million or 5 million or 10 million, or I need 10,000 a month in cash flow. And they get wound up about that how, and they forget about the confidence. And the only way you get confidence is when you go build and you go through things, and you have that philosophy that Henry Ford had 100 plus years ago when somebody said, well, if you got lost all your money, what would you do? And he goes, I'd have it back in 5 years. And Anybody that's gone through the process of building things, breaking things, losing things, you don't want to lose your money, but you also aren't, it's not like, oh my God, I'm dead. You just go, okay, well, I know how to build it. It'll be way faster and probably better. And so the idea is teaching people how to trust themselves enough to take action to build the muscle. Like, don't look through the window at the gym. We're going to take you into the gym and help you build. The focus I have on people in 2026 is the idea around teaching them, mostly teaching them to trust themselves, to
Right.
go do the things. And it's not really about going and learning how to invest in a rental house or something where you just hand your money and just hope. Like, hope is not a strategy. Like, smoking hopium is a terrible philosophy. This is about personal development. It's about mindset. Once you have that confidence, you're free because you're not sitting there hoping your money doesn't go away. And the idea of financial freedom is really that you're not afraid anymore. You're not waking up going, oh my God, what if my money goes away? Because, just like when you and I walk out in the streets, we're not sitting there going, is somebody going to hurt me? We have a confidence because of the training. And until that moment, I've had people come to me with millions of dollars, terrified they're going to lose it. And generally they do lose it because they attract what they're thinking about. This is a shift to where they're being a good steward of their wealth. They're and they also understand that when black swans happen, they know exactly how they would go and they would create, because that's what they've mastered. They've mastered creating wealth because it's really an idea and it's about serving and creating value. And we have unlimited capacity in our minds and our hearts if we focus on the why versus how do I go make another $1 million? Like, that's the wrong question, I think, for most people.
You're also an incredible serial entrepreneur. You would be there. You talk about the foundational 15% of business principles that determine whether you're going to be a success or a failure. What are those things for people that are listening that are entrepreneurs?
So some of those I kind of touched on a little bit, just being willing, like, you go into something saying, I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to bump into things, having a deep why, having this mission. Like, some of these things are, we've heard them a million times, having your mission and your values and your vision and the team. Like, I've made mistakes, and this is a huge one where I go, oh, I can just do it faster. That's the biggest mistake out there, just saying I'm going to do it by myself, even though a lot of people are going from 0 to billion in very short periods of time with tiny teams. The foundational piece is have your vision, find the best people, not the cheapest people. That's one of the dumbest things I've done, is hiring people, and they end up costing me money. World-class people don't cost anything. They just make you money and they create, they do their thing. It's making sure that you've got some type of appropriate capital. I've blown up many businesses because they were undercapitalized, and I see it all the time, and you end up in crisis. And so these are some of the things. There is a foundational 15%, and it's saying, are these things in place? And if they're not, how do I get those in place and then launch? What most people do is, I've seen, that they're focused on, how do I get the right logo and the right business card and all this and cool swag, and they don't think about any of this other stuff. And then they wonder why they're part of the statistics that 9 out of 10 businesses fail in 5 years and that whole thing. It's because they missed like 90% of the foundational pieces. And that was what Unicornomics is all about. Here's the stuff. And then what's funny to me is when I miss one of those things, and then I look at the book and I go, oh, yeah, we're having a problem because I forgot chapter 3. Like, I should just read this book like on a monthly basis. There's nothing in that book or the foundational 15% that anybody that's over 10 has not heard. It's bringing them all together. And then it's almost like a checklist, and then asking, if you're going to violate this, why would you do that? And for most people, it's because they're impatient. They go, I just want to go. I just want to do it. It's like, all right, that's like going and hitting the gas and then not checking to see if you have, tires or fuel. Like, you got to check out, and maybe check to see if your brakes are on. Like, do you have brakes? That might be important.
I want to get back to something that was on my mind. How much money do you think you've raised during your career for all the different businesses that you've been involved in?
It's probably about 250 million of cash. And this is, all that money was individuals. So, when I say individuals, I'm talking about people with faces and, like heartbeats, and the conversations that I've had with them. This is not like 212 million from, I don't know, Andreessen Horowitz or something, or Goldman, or like, yeah.
What advice do you have for people that have an idea, they've done all the work, but now they got to go out and raise 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million to not be undercapitalized? What's the secret?
One of the secrets is to be really clear about what you're going to do. I've had people pitch me on their things and I go, you're literally targeting 12 different markets at once. You have one person doing whatever it is. And so this narrow focus, the one of the biggest mistakes people make when they're thinking about raising money for anything from businesses to real
Right.
estate, whatever, they think, oh, I'll just go out there and tell people it's a great deal and they'll invest. And they've built no trust. One of the great things about people that set up podcasts is you end up building trust because people get to know you and your personality. So that's probably one of the greatest hacks out there, because you can show up and people can go into relationship with you. The reason that I was able to, the money that was raised over the last almost 30 years was based on previous relationships. And some of them were new, but there might have been 6 months, a year, 2 years of showing up. Like, people get to know you. And then when you say, I've got this thing, they're like, yeah, that sounds cool. But what they're saying is, I trust you to execute on this thing. That's the most important thing, which the speed of trust. We're back to that. People say, how did you raise so much money and so fast? And it wasn't fast. It took years to build this, the network and the relationships, and people watch how you show up. Like, you might be in business doing something completely different, and they see how you operate. They see how you're available when they call you. You reach out. People. I've sent out gazillions of handwritten cards and gifts. And I've given away 50,000 copies of my books, and I've sold like 50. Like, it's like
Right.
there's a different philosophy of serving people. And one of the mistakes people make is they'll say, well, okay, so I'm going to go and serve people. I'm going to go ask them what I can do to help. Rich people and busy people don't have time to help you help them. But if you go figure it out and go solve the problem, you become very valuable to them and very trusted. But people go, I need to do it today. And that is the worst possible time to start building a relationship, because you look like you're trying to get something instead of serving them and building something. That the advice is, have a longer term perspective and say, the first thing to do is, how do I build really honest, genuine relationships like we do with all the guys and gals at R360? We go show up and we have good times. We hang out, and tons of business will get done with people, but you don't go there saying, I'm going to go harvest. Like Grant Cardone says, I go into a room and I'm looking for, like, I want to figure out who's got my money. I'm like, that doesn't really work with me. Like, good on Grant, but that's not my philosophy. It's, how can I go in here and connect with people and have a better life experience for both of us?
Yeah. What I've learned in all the money I've raised is always start with, hey, anything you do has risks.
Yeah.
These are the risks that I see in this, and this is how I am minimizing those risks. But I rather bring all of them up, and maybe somebody brings something up um that I'm not thinking of. And look, there's probably 4 or 5 businesses that I've gone out, raised serious money, and it hasn't worked out. It's failed. And being able to proactively go sit in front of the couple or the person that you raised money from and be totally, like, honest about it. And, you feel terrible, but they're like, look, we went through the risks. Shit happens. It's not like I put 100% of my wealth in this. It was a small percentage. What, uh, what else are you doing? It's like, I'm so amazed by, even if you lose people money, if you're totally honest, they will continue to follow you. Like you said, you have a relationship, the way that you show up. And the other thing I learned to do is never ask money from family, because the most stressful time when I started one of my businesses is raising money from my mom, brother-in-laws. Man, until I paid that money back, I did not sleep at night. It was like 2 or 3 years.
And I think that's a great rule in general. To like, I've a lot of people that I talk to don't even their family doesn't even really know what they do, and
Right.
they're definitely not pitching them. There's the idea of, when you first start, you're going to go to friends, family, and fools. Like, that's how you're going to raise your money. And I think back to some of the early people after I'd been in real estate for 2 to 3 years. Some people that I'd known since I was really young said, that's really cool what you're doing. And I said, yeah. And if you want to participate, you could be an investor, and here's how this could look. And some of those people got involved. And it was interesting to go through the experience when things melted down in 2008,
Yeah.
watching people, because, I lost more than everything. And, everybody got wiped at the same time. And there were some pretty painful experiences that I share a lot, because I think people are too flippant when they go raise money. I think that they go out there And they're like, oh yeah, real estate always goes up. Yeah. Nobody really talked about bridge financing that blows up your deal and makes you underwater in 6 months because the Fed goes, ooh, hyper. But when I was more flippant 25 years ago with people, and I wasn't saying, oh yeah, look, here's all the ways we can lose money. Like you just described, super
Right.
smart. It's rational. It's honest. We don't want to think that there's a downside, but that is exactly what should be done. And when people lost money, like I didn't see how you could lose money buying a single family house or building an apartment, or it's naive being 20 something. Some of the commentary I got back, there was one woman, and she said, first she said I should go to a bar and I should schling beers and make drinks so that I could pay back. I was like, you want to pay back $25 million by serving beers? I was like, this wasn't a loan, this was an investment. And then her next response was, there's a special place in hell for you. And I thought, wow. So clearly there was no more investing with the relationship. It was so harsh. And then she actually reached out and showed up. And like I found a voicemail this last year from her saying, hey, would love it if you could send me some money. And I'm thinking, 20 years ago, I was homeless after this thing. And I went out and just did a grind for a long time. And it's always about, what can I get? That's what I'm getting from her. And
Right.
I'm thinking, you probably don't remember telling me that you thought I should burn in hell. It's not really making me want to go do anything special, but it is a rational thing that's going to happen. People are going to be pissed. And yes, some of them are going to be really, really respected. They're going to respect you for being open. And a lot of people will reinvest even after you've lost money because you're legitimate. But there is a lot of people don't realize how bad it can be when you lose other people's money. It's way worse than losing your own money, way worse. And I think people don't take it as seriously as they should.
I agree with you. The other kind of something I had learned earlier, but when I was teaching at MIT, I got to know Bill Aulette, who's the head of entrepreneurship, and he wrote a great book. It's called Disciplined Entrepreneurship: 24 Steps to a Successful Startup. And they looked at thousands of startups of what made them successful. And they came up with 6 different buckets, and there's 4 or 5 different steps, questions in each bucket. And the first was, who's your customer? Second, what can you do for your customer? Third, how does your customer acquire your product? Fourth, how do you make money off your product? How do you design and build your product? And how do you build and scale the business? And even like Art360, it was 3 months with 4 professors, 10 students, answering all these questions, calling over 100 people, then having a product. And part 2 was having an operating system to build and scale. I've used EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System by Gino Wickman, 5 or 6 times. It has 20 different tools. And just being disciplined about hiring, everything. I wish I had these tools 20 years ago when I was just winging it. It's funny how you say, you wrote all these things in your book and it's like, oh shit, I forgot to read that chapter. I should read it again.
I just finished up a 10-year process with a thing called a 10-year journal, where you have each day is like 4 lines. And so you can see the same day over 10 years.
Wow.
And every once in a while, I'll flip through and I start to see things. And I was like, wow, I did the same thing over 4 different years, because the first page of each month shows the 10 years in like a little teeny half-inch square where you kind of put the highlights or keywords or whatever. And so my next process with this thing, because there's so much juice inside of 10 years of daily commentary from me, I thought, all right, there's an AI tool that is going to be awesome. I'm going to cut the spine off it. I got this really cool thing to cut the spine off of any book. And then I'm going to scan all this stuff and then drop it into chat and have it figure out what the trends are, what I'm doing, the learnings that's in this thing. Like, this is priceless. So I'm basically going to destroy my journal to tap into it. And I'm like really excited about what that's going to be. I might be a little terrified about what it says about me. Like, you keep doing the same dumb thing.
Right.
What is wrong with you? Like, I might get that because I train it to give me ruthless truth, like a Cold War judge judging, the Olympic gymnasts. that's how I've literally trained it. And I'm really excited about doing that.
Wow. Tell me about your journaling, your process, and how has that impacted you long term?
So it's another process to get things out of me and to put it on paper so I can see it. So it's not just percolating. The thing I like about the 4 journal is it forces you, and you can extend past the 4 lines into the back of the journal and keep going if you have more
Right.
stuff. But it kind of forces you to, and it's forced me to say, okay, what are the big ideas? What's the big experience that I'm having today? And I spend a lot of time on an annual basis and in those daily experiences talking about with myself the things that I'm grateful for. So before I do goals, like last month in December, I'll spend an entire day just going through, writing down everything, every podcast, every book, every human that I'm grateful for from the previous year. I had a business divorce in 2025, most painful thing I think I've ever gone through, and it almost drove me to quit like life. Like I'm just done with everything. I'm going to go live in a box. It was brutal. And that person was in my gratitude list. So grateful for everything I learned, grateful that we were able to do this. Then from there, I'm going into my goals and thinking about other things. That conscious practice of the gratitude. And there's lots of different ways of doing it. Spending an entire day before I do goals makes everything from the previous year like valid. And one of the mistakes I think people make is they say, here's my goals. And a lot of times it makes their other stuff wrong. Like what they've done, all the cool stuff, the bad people, they're like, I'm going to have great experiences this coming year. And what I'm saying is I'm so thankful for everything that happened for me and with me that I got to be a part of, even the shit that was really, really painful. And it's this incredible stepping stone towards the next thing. I'm not making anything wrong. I'm saying yes and not but this. It's just a different way of maneuvering, and it feels different than making stuff previously. Like, oh, I didn't make enough money. I'm so grateful for all the things, and so that's my practice. It feels really good, and it's I'm grateful for the failed at bats, like attempting a
Right.
relationship and then it didn't work. I'm like, okay, I'm grateful for that. And I learned something and I'm going to bring that learning into the next thing as opposed to, well, that was stupid. And then I do it again because I'm not grateful and I didn't learn anything.
Well, something that resonated with me that you've is a belief of yours. Mistakes are never a failure. They're an opportunity from the universe to grow, and success is not the best teacher. Can you talk about that?
There's a part of our primal being, our brain, that is like we spend so much time avoiding pain and trying not to get eaten or killed. Success doesn't really teach us the things that we remember. When you trip, you fall, you fall off your bike, you fail a test, a business blows up. That pain sears into us. And people that are like, I was a straight A student for a long time. It didn't really teach me a lot, but getting thrown out of college, there were some stingings that went on, and
Right.
losing money and having lawsuits and like all the different things. Each one of those things was a great opportunity to say, okay, what could I learn here? And I just have never had the energy around a success, like the successful moment where you cheers and you're happy and then
Right.
you move on. Are you going to do the same thing? Maybe, but guaranteed when you make when you have the failure, the event, the biggest lesson there is to not connect the event with the person. And people go, oh, I failed, therefore I'm a failure. And then they get stuck and then they try to avoid being a failure. And it is, I believe, the wrong way of looking at it. When you fail, that is a gift and you get to be better when you learn from it as opposed to running away from failing. But most people, that's what they do. And they wonder, why am I not getting anywhere? Because you got to go through things. You got to actually learn what you need to learn. And if you're not failing, you're never going to learn. You're just going to be, you're like looking for the unicorn.
I try to teach my kids that I don't believe in failure, because if you can learn one thing, it wasn't a failure, it was a learning experience. And if you're not failing, you're not growing. It's like a muscle. So you're not pushing yourself hard enough. I had read also that you were talking about a failure. You were fired from a volunteer position on a US Senate campaign.
I didn't even know that was possible.
Like, what was that about?
Makes me laugh. I was just sharing the story with somebody this last week, and I said I'm a terrible employee because I play life to win. I play like I don't show up and say, oh, I'm going to do half ass or I'm going to show up until 5 o'clock. Like I'm just not that guy. It makes me crazy when I have people
Right.
that at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock or whatever. And oh, it didn't work, or I didn't get to it. So I just am going to ignore it and I'll do it next week after my vacation. I went out to this campaign in Connecticut in 2010. I moved, sold my house, moved across the country, showed up and said, I'm here to win. It kind of freaked him out. And this was Peter Schiff's campaign, for U.S. Senate when he was running. And so he was this odd duck, had a lot of notoriety in the markets at CNBC, and he was fun. He was fun to be around. He was totally nuts, and he's a friend of mine. And I say that with affection. Like
Right.
one of the crazy things is being around somebody that doesn't care what anybody thinks, and he'll say exactly what he thinks. So I spent 6 months there volunteering. I thought, I didn't know about politics. Since then, I ended up dating a congresswoman and seeing like crazy things behind the scenes in DC, and politics is pretty gnarly, to be really frank. And when I was with him, my job kind of turned into being his driver / bodyguard / fundraising guy. He didn't die. He didn't get killed, although he pissed everybody off, including his supporters, including them. And I remember going into the campaign manager's office because I proposed that we sue President Obama and the administration over the healthcare thing. And he just looked at me and he goes, we think you'd be happier somewhere else. And I was like, wait, are you firing me? I'm free. How do you fire a free? You guys need people, but the whole system was built for people to get to the next campaign, the next bigger thing. And I wasn't looking for that. I was looking for a way to help win.
Right.
And that was the wrong, like volunteers for politics. They're not looking for people that want them to win. It's winning the next reelection. That's kind of the focus. I just, now I laugh if somebody were to say, you should get a job. I'd be like, I can't even keep a job that I'm not getting paid for. Like, are you serious? That's because I'm willing to take all the risks and do the things. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm wired that way. And you're talking about forcing me to be a rabbit when I'm actually a bobcat. Like that doesn't work.
That is so funny. I have the same personality, and I joined the military. It's like
Wild.
that I was a misfit, but I found I would do well if I was out in the field, win and stay alive and don't get killed. But if I was at the headquarters, the Pentagon, whatever, I would get crushed. But what are you excited about in 2026? And what are the different businesses that you're operating now?
So I'm excited for the relationships that go beyond just the business stuff. I'm loving that. I'm loving all the different things that I get to participate and experience with other people. One of the things I did a lot over the years was travel, sometimes with groups, sometimes by myself. The things I'm really looking forward to is being in a relationship and getting to experience things and then compounding. Like I have a book behind me called Die With Zero that Bill Perkins wrote.
Great book. Yeah.
It's a great book. And I went, oh man, I used to be really good at traveling. Like I did it a lot. And then I got so focused and fixated on business. I was missing that a lot. I went, wow, I'm missing the compounding effect of these experiences. So this year there's a shift towards only bringing world-class people on. I had a pretty big shift in a lot of my people for my companies, my retirement account company that we set up self-directed retirement accounts, and the precious metals company. There was a big exodus, and it forced me to get really, really efficient and then ask, who do I really need? So this year it's about getting great people that are teaching me and that are driving. So I'm not driving everything, which is a terrible idea because I'm not that good at everything. I'm pretty good at a couple of things. And then really putting a lot more energy into the relationships and being so conscious and mindful about my health. I went into a phase where there wasn't enough focus on that. It was, I'm just going to keep pushing and grinding, and it was very out of balance. And that's there.
And how do you do with your sleep?
So my sleep is probably my best part, which is funny. So I'm in Sedona. It's very dark. It's very quiet. Right. And it's amazing. One of the things that's wild is I go from here to a city, and I'm up late. I'm doing things here at 8:30, 9 o'clock. I am definitely down, and I'm up usually between 3 and 4, and I'll go sit outside and I'm looking at the stars in the jacuzzi, and it's very dark and it's very easy to see stars here. And I look at my Aura and my Whoop and all these devices that are tracking me, and I get really excited about, ooh, I got a crown today. So that's like Brian Johnson, the superhuman.
Yeah.
When I was watching him at the Bitcoin conference last year, he said, there's one thing that everybody here needs to do better. You need to have better sleep. And how do you do that? You've got to lower your heart rate before you go to sleep and keep it lower. And here's 5 things, 5 ways to do that. And I went, man, I'm violating every one of those.
What were those? Because sleep and I are not on the same. I ran into Deepak Chopra and I was like, Deepak, you've written 100 books on hell. What's the one thing? Oh, it's
Yeah.
easy. Sleep. Go to sleep. And I said, can you tell me the next one?
I was talking to a friend of mine that I met through R360 in Austin, and she was cracking me up. She goes, I mean, sleep's a waste of time. I might sleep 2 or 3 hours a day. And I went, okay, you've got a problem. This is not sustainable. And so the things that Brian showed up with, he said, look, you got to eating late. No, you don't want your gut all messed up. And so like 4 hours or more between the last meal, not drinking alcohol at all if possible, or if you do, way earlier.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, so day drinking. Okay, cool. All right, got it. And then ruminating. And when you're sitting there and your mind's on fire, and that was me for 2023 and 2024 really badly. I was ruminating on this bad business relationship from morning until night, and then I was sleeping and it was still ruminating. My sleep scores sucked. There were no crowns, and those were the big three. If you can handle those three, you will naturally sleep so much better. And what's really cool about the sleep, when your sleep is better, you're obviously healing your mind and your body.
Yeah.
But then when you wake up, you're making better decisions because you're not worn out. And I was noticing if I'm sleep deprived, I'm making worse decisions, whether it's making terrible relationship decisions, or I decide I want to drink, or I want to eat crappy food. If I have slept, I'm not going to do those things because I've got willpower. Willpower goes out the window when you're sleep deprived. And so it's a cycle. And those three things, just the eating too late, the drinking, and the ruminating, and there's other stuff, but those three are so obvious. If you think about it, oh, I could do those. You really could. And then your sleep changes and everything else. It's a freaking domino compounding effect that has absolutely changed things.
When you have fun, like fun, what do you love doing?
It's not skydiving. I can tell you that. Yeah, I love being out in pure environments. And one of the things that I loved about going to Africa and being on safari and wandering around, it was the most honest place I've ever been, because it's like, especially young kids and animals. And so in Sedona, I go out and I'm bumping into coyotes and javelinas and deer, and my fun is being connected to honest, and there's a purity. It's like pure love, and being around people that are as close to that as possible, which is quite sadly not most people. They're wound up about stuff, and so my fun is being more and more connected and being in those moments, sitting under the stars at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's funny, people go, man, I need to be doing stuff, and I laugh. I'm like, you might actually be happy, kind of happier if you had moments of stillness. And I think that's the last chapter in Reinvented Life. It's about stillness and the power and the joy in the stillness, connected to something that's really pure and honest, and the closest connection to God and to love. I think that's in a lot of ways where you find it.
I'm the same way, and I'm about water, ocean, which is why I live right on the beach. My wife has been kind of a homebody, but now she said, "Okay, I'm going to start doing things." So I'm really looking forward this year. Next week, we're going to the Cayman Islands to an R360 event with all these Michelin chefs. She's agreed to go on a Ritz-Carlton cruise in Europe and going to F1 Monaco. So some of my best trips have been just hanging out with other R360 members and their spouses and their kids. And like you said, developing tighter bonds and relationships. At the end of the day, you're going to remember for how you made people feel and what impact you had in their life. And that's about it. So
It reminds me of the F1 event in Vegas, big R360 thing we did. And I just did an incredible job bringing all these cool people together. And what was funny is we're up in this condo way up at 40th floor or something, looking down, and you can see the race, but most people didn't like. After 2 minutes of looking at it, they're like, "Yeah, okay, whatever. I want to focus on the people that are in this room." And we had these conversations, and I thought, man, these events, they're just an excuse to get together and hang out and bond, and that's been something that has been really missing. And it's like, just does an incredible job of curating these experiences that we get to do. And I think a lot of times people skip out or delay on, and they don't say yes to, I'm going to do the thing, because it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy and traveling. And very few times do we regret going on things. Even like I remember going to Europe in 2008, right after, it's like right before the meltdown. And I was with this girl, and we were on a train going into Croatia from Venice, and we got stopped at the border, and they came in, and we're sleeping, and the door opens up, and I have an Uzi pointed in my face, and
Holy
I'm being
cow.
yelled at in like Serbian or like whatever it was. And I'm like, I don't know even know what you're saying. But they were trying to get my passport. I couldn't find my passport. So I'm butt naked, sitting there, hands up, trying to find this girl is cracking up. I'm like, this isn't funny. There's an Uzi pointed at my face. And that's like a terrifying experience, and yet priceless, and would not take it back. And people would go, oh man, like I've almost been kidnapped in Myanmar and in China. And like, there's all these experiences. I wouldn't take any of them back. I like when people are like, I'm going to go do the thing. And it's like, maybe it's scary. It's like, yeah, you won't regret the thing. You'll regret the thing you didn't do.
Well, I'm going to send you some dates for, you got to come to a Miami meeting, and we have them back to back. So you could come. We meet at the Moore Club. They have 13 really nice rooms. You can go to both meetings and meet, like 30 people in 2 days. But I think they'd really enjoy meeting you. Really good group of men and women.
I would absolutely love that. That
All
is,
right.
I mean, that's the purpose of this. It's the people. It's the really cool people, like the
Yeah.
coolest people, dense. Like R360 is a dense, cool people space. It's pretty neat.
I woke up this morning, 8 a.m. I'm talking to a guy that applied in India. And then we have somebody else that applied in the Philippines. Like, how did you find us? And both were like, Chat GPT. Okay.
No way. I love that. That's funny.
Unbelievable. So it's like, we're not even doing international yet, but it's, it's going to happen. Is there any question that I haven't asked that I should have asked that you'd want to answer for the audience?
One of the most powerful moments, and I like to share this because I think it's one of those things that can, without having to get to that moment where you're like, oh man, I wish I'd learned this before.
Yeah.
It was the experience that I had in 2014. My dad died in February of 2014. And in 2013, when I found out he was terminal, he was about to die, I flew up to Alaska and sat down with him, and we sat there, and it was finally dawning on him that he was out of time. And he looked at me and he said, there were so many things that I wanted to do. And I'm just like, I didn't know what to say. And then we just both started crying. And it was because there was this realization that he was out of time, and we're all going to be out of time at some point in time. And he was sitting there, and I was feeling the regret. I was feeling the regret of him not having done the thing because he was playing safe. I thought, man, you know what? And that was the moment where I said, okay, my job, and it's, we talk about financial freedom. My job is to do everything I can in whatever way that is to help as many people as possible never have that conversation, never make that statement, never have somebody they love say it to them. It's the moment of regret. That feeling of emotion, the regret was like seared into my soul. And so going forward, it's a question of, all right, what are the things, like today I'm waking up, will I regret? Like, I'm not doing regret. So I'm going to do
Right.
something so that there is no regret. I want to wake up at the last day and my final breath and look back and go, that was spectacular. Not, oh man, there's a lot of things I wish I'd have done. Like, we're not going to regret the things that we do. We will regret the things that we hesitate on. And that was one of the greatest gifts. It was a huge warning at the same time. And I think that's important for everybody to consider, because you don't want that to be in your last days, the thing you're thinking about.
I remember reading that your father was so afraid of money, he didn't like go to your sister's wedding. Like, what was that about?
It's the scarcity philosophy that I grew up with, and it was partially money, and it was partially afraid of if I leave. I remember him saying, "Well, it was February or March, and in Alaska, well, the pipes might explode and the cats might freeze and turn into popsicles." Uh, I was trying to reconcile how that framework for life works when you think about things in those terms, and that was most important. But that's when we live in fear, it will take over, and there would, like, learning to pivot. You said that a little while ago
Yeah.
about saying, "Oh, I have a new idea," and then we shift. This is the opposite of politics. They anchor down and then they defend it to the death instead of saying, "Oh, new information." Well, if you do that, you're called a flip flopper. And I laughed, and I didn't really see Dad doing that. With the one exception, he started to learn how to love and to be loved in the last year. maybe the last couple of years. And that was really beautiful to see that, because
Wow.
I looked at him and I said, I've never seen you soft and gentle. I never heard you say, I love you to mom. But his girlfriend, he said, I love you, baby. And I almost started crying. I'm like, who are you? And so he did start to understand that. That was really cool. It was like, okay, good. I need to be better at that, because I think I'm just too much of a dick most of the time, and probably a reason I'm single. And so I was learning and picking up on those really beautiful things, and then letting the warnings, because everything is either an example or a warning. Like if you think about our experiences, we want more of it or we want to avoid it. And so we can take everything and learn from it, and then decide whether we want to emulate it or absolutely run from it.
I have very few regrets, but, one of the early R360 exercises, I think it was human capital. We had to ask our kids, like, what have I done well as a father? What are opportunities to do better? And my 4 kids, it was always like, hey, you're very purpose driven. I admire it. You're out saving the world, doing these 500 things. But when was the last time that we went anywhere, like one on one? And
Mm.
for that matter, when was the last time we went on a family vacation? And it's like, shit. And they were just fighting for my time. And I had to do some therapy around this, like, okay, like what's going on? It's like, well, like my dad died young. I'm going to die young. So I got all this stuff on my bucket list I got to get done. And children model my behavior. So if I'm a good human, they're just going to model me. It's like wrong. I ended up getting off of all my boards, Girl Scouts, Junior Achievement, this, that. And I said, next 5 years, I'm just going to really focus on those people that are closest to me. And I read a book some time ago called Chasing Daylight. And it was, this EY CEO, and he was told he had 3 or 4 months to live. And he wanted to say goodbye to all his friends. And he did the circle, and he found out that the people that he was spending all his time were on the fourth circle, and the person on the inner circle, no time. So changing that around had over the last 2 years has been a big shift for me. And now that I have 3 grandchildren, it's like, oh yeah, I want to be around when they grow up. So I hope that your relationship, family situation comes to come to bear. I got to send you to. Have you been to a New York meeting yet?
Not yet.
I think they got like 7 women. I think 5 of them are single. So you got to show up there. Well, enjoy meeting you.
I'm gonna show up everywhere. I mean, that's the intention for 26, 27. It's showing up everywhere, and being open. And like one of the things that I'm very deliberate about, when I was in Seattle, we went to Blue Origin, and
Oh, awesome.
I
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I heard
it
about
was very
that.
cool. Very convinced that I'm on track to go into space. Like I was like, of course I'm going to space. I wanted to do this since I was a kid. I wanted to be an astronaut. Now I can just literally sign up and go within a year. But there was a gal that came up to me, and she said, "Hey, do you happen to be single?" And I'm looking over at her, and I was a little confused because she had this giant ring on her wedding. I was like, and then she said, "I have somebody I want to introduce you to." And I said, "I love that." And so I'm telling everybody, I'd really like to be in a relationship, and I would love introductions, because you're cool and you know cool people, and that would mean the world to me. And we want our friends to be happy and in relationships. And so if we can figure out how to be a matchmaker, I'm not holding back. I'm not going to say, I hope it just happens by accident. Like it's being intentional.
I used to be top 20. Now I'm one of the top 100 most connected people in the world on LinkedIn. I know people.
Oh my goodness. I guess so.
I know people. I'm not a matchmaker, but I know people. So I'm gonna get to work. You're gonna be on my radar.
Thank you.
Well, okay, my friend. This was awesome. I look forward to getting to know you better, and thank you for
Likewise.
being on.
Thank you, Charlie. It's been awesome, and I look forward to the future, hanging out and experiencing life with you.